Hey there, and welcome back to another B.Hooked tutorial. In today's episode, I'll share with you a demonstration on how to crochet these Cozy Striped Crochet Gloves. It's a free pattern that's available on my website. You can access the pattern at bhookedcrochet.com/gloves, or you can look in the video description below and see it linked right here on your screen. Okay, so you'll want to get a hold of that pattern before we get started and grab your supplies. Let's begin. Now each one of the fingers begins with the magic ring. So the way we do that is we take our tail and our dominant hand there and wrap it around our two fingers. Then we'll just pinch that off. So I'm holding the working strand in between these two fingers and the tail here under my thumb. Then stick your hook underneath both. Grab that back one and pull it under. Then grab your working yarn. Pull through, and then we'll do that one more time. Now the difference between each of the fingers is the number of stitches that we work in this magic ring. Actually, the pinky is the only one that's different. So for all of your fingers, we'll work 9 single crochet in this magic ring. For the pinky, we'll single crochet 8. So make sure you're catching both of those loops under your hook when you make your single crochet stitches. And we'll work 9 of those just around this section here. And once you have all of your stitches, we can grab our tail and just pull on that, and it will fasten up the ring. And we can continue with our first round. Now we're not going to increase or anything like that, but we will need to make a single crochet into every stitch. Now one of the challenges, of course, with this yarn is being able to see those stitches. I like to rely on my feel, and I definitely count as I'm crocheting. Now you'll notice we didn't join with a slip stitch before we started this round. That'll be the trend for our fingers. We're just going to work in a spiral here. We don't have to worry about joining or anything like that. Now it's all single crochets from here. We're just going to work 1 single crochet into every stitch, no joining, just working in a spiral as we work up the length of each of the different fingers. Now as you guessed, each finger has a different length, and that's so we have a more of a custom fit, and you'll find the instructions for that over on my website. Once again, on that pattern page, I recommend you check that out so you can figure out how long to make each one of your fingers. So keep in mind that this little set of instructions here is how you crochet all of the fingers. So whether it be the pinky, the thumb, or what have you, the instructions will be the same. Now what I would like to cover next is how to start working on the hand. So basically, after you have all of your fingers crocheted, we'll pick up with that joining round next. So what I like to do before I start this hand, the first round where we're joining all of the fingers together, is just lay them out because they are a little bit different, and we're going to start with the pinky and work our way over here. Now this is the thumb. We aren't going to use this one at this point, but we will in a few more rounds. So we'll grab color A once again and create a slip knot. We'll fasten on here to the pinky. Now you can really fasten on in any stitch, it really doesn't matter. I like to keep things a little bit consistent though, so I'll find where I fastened off, and that's where I'll join for my first stitch. So place the loop on your hook, pull it through. I'm going to chain 1 to fasten it on, but that's not going to count as a stitch, so I'll work my first single crochet in that same place. Now leave your tail exposed here. We'll use that to sort of close up a gap that we'll have when we join. So I'm not working over it, I'm just leaving it in the background. And then I'll make 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Then I'll grab my next finger, this being the ring finger, and I'll single crochet into any stitch and then continue with 1 single crochet in the next 3, again leaving this tail exposed, just hanging in the background. Grab your middle finger, do the same thing, single crochet into any stitch, and then once into each of the next 3. And finally, the index finger, same thing, single crochet into any stitch. Now I'll leave that tail hanging in the background, and this time we're working around the hand. So we're basically closing up the round. I'll make 1 single crochet into each of the next 9 stitches of my index finger. Now that'll put us on the back side here. Just keep your tails where they are to sort of get them out of the way, and I'll continue by making a single crochet in the remaining 5 stitches of my middle finger here. And then continue on with the ring finger, 1 single crochet into the remaining 5 stitches. And finally the pinky, we just have 4 remaining stitches from the pinky, so we'll single crochet once into each of the last 4. Alright, now for this next round we'll continue working just with color A. We will incorporate a couple of decreases. We're already jumping on the shaping train here. We won't join with a slip stitch to our first single crochet. We'll just continue on to work our first single crochet in that stitch. And because we're working in a spiral and because we're decreasing, we need to mark this first stitch so we know when we've reached the end of our round. So the repeat for this round is to work 5 single crochets, so 1 into each of the next 5 stitches total. Now remember, we're counting that first one. And then we'll do a single crochet 2 together decrease. So stick your hook in the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert it into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And repeat, 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, followed by a single crochet 2 together. Now if you've done everything correctly, your last 2 stitches should be a single crochet 2 together. And you'll only work part of that because we need to add in color B. So I've got it pulled up here so that my next step would be to yarn over and pull through all 3. And then I'll go ahead and grab my new ball of yarn, or my new color, make a slip knot, place that loop on my hook, and I'll pull that through these 3 loops, and that'll finish the stitch and get me set up to start working in my new color for the next round. Now you have probably seen the little holes in between your fingers. That's completely normal. It just happens with the joining process. One thing to keep things a little tidy and more organized though is grab your tails and pull them through those holes. Like I said, we're going to use these tails to sew the holes together, and it just makes life a little easier if we don't crochet them into our gloves. So just pull those through. Alright, so we're moving on to round number 3 of the pattern here. We're working just with single crochets, but because we're doing 2 different colors, we need to just sort of keep track of things. So we won't ever fasten off color A. We're just going to leave it there, and we'll work around and we'll pick it back up when we're ready to use it again. So just make sure you've got that held to the back, pick up your color B to work, we'll remove our stitch marker, but we still want to use that because we will do some more decreasing later on. So when you make your first single crochet of this round, just go ahead and mark it once again. And from here, just make one single crochet into every stitch. And when you make it to the end of your round, don't fully work your last single crochet. So just yarn over, pull up a loop, and then when you yarn over and pull through 2 to finish it off, make sure you pick up color A to yarn over and pull through 2. That'll be the case from here on out when we're working with these 2 colors. So we'll just drop color B, let it just sit there. We're not going to do anything with it for this next round. So remove your stitch marker. We're moving on now to round 4. I'll single crochet in my first stitch there and then replace the marker and continue on. This round is really simple again, just one single crochet into every stitch. Now on round 5 of the hand, I'll switch back to color B. So just yarn over, pull through those last 2 loops to finish off that last single crochet. Now this round we'll do a little more shaping, so we'll decrease once again, remove your stitch marker. This time we'll work 4 single crochets and then a single crochet 2 together. So that counts as my first. Don't forget your stitch marker, that's really important. Work 3 more single crochets. And then single crochet 2 together. So the repeat once again for this round is 1 single crochet in the next 4 stitches, followed by a single crochet 2 together. Now just like before when we decreased, if you've done everything correctly, your last 2 stitches should be a single crochet 2 together. If it's not, just go back and double check and make sure that you put your decreases where you're supposed to and that there were 4 stitches in between them. It's really easy to get sidetracked and forget to decrease. Now I'll pick up color A to finish off my single crochet 2 together and continue on with round 6. Now round 6 is the last round before we add the thumb. We'll continue working here with color A, and I'll just make 1 single crochet into every stitch. And with the end of this round, we'll pick up color B once again, finish off that last stitch with a yarn over and pull through 2. We'll use color B to add on the thumb. So we are going to continue with the color changes, so just leave color A just hanging in the background, and things will be a little different depending on which glove you're working on at this point only. So if you're working on the right hand glove, you'll start with 9 single crochets. But if you're working on the left glove like I am here, I will work 14 single crochets here at the beginning. And for reference, you can find all of this over on the written instructions page on my website. So to add the thumb, we want to basically work through both layers for 2 stitches. That'll give it a little extra security. So stick your hook into the next stitch of your hand and then into any stitch of the thumb. And we'll single crochet. And then we'll do that once more. Find your next stitch on your hand and then put that through the next stitch on your thumb. Single crochet. Okay, so now it's added, and we'll continue by making 1 single crochet into the remaining 7 stitches of our thumb. And from here we can continue working the stitches on our hand. Once again, this number will be different depending on which one you're working on. For the left-handed glove, you'll work through the remaining 9 stitches, and for the right hand you'll work through the remaining 14 stitches. Now with that last step, all of the hard stuff is pretty much out of the way. So I will switch back over here to color A to work my next round and refer to the written instructions here. Basically what we'll do is work 4 solid single crochet rounds. So we're not doing anything crazy or different, just 1 single crochet into every stitch. And we are switching back and forth. So I'll work 1 round with color A, followed by 1 round with color B, and then 1 round with color A and 1 round with color B before we do any shaping again. So go ahead and work through that part. I will get there as well, and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so now we're picking up with round number 12. We'll do just a little bit more shaping. We have color A in hand and we're ready to start working. So remove your stitch marker and we'll make 1 single crochet into the first 6 stitches. Don't forget to replace your stitch marker in that first stitch once again. And then we'll do our decrease, our single crochet 2 together. So the repeat for this round is 1 single crochet into the next 6 stitches, followed by a single crochet 2 together. Now, like before, if you've done everything correctly, your last 2 stitches at the end of this round should be a single crochet 2 together, and then we'll pick up color B. So we're going to work our final round here in color B. So I'll yarn over, pull through all 3 to start things off. And by the way, we should have a total of 28 stitches at the end of round number 12. You can find all of that information on the pattern as well, outlined there at the end of each row. So for round 13, our final round with color B, we'll just make 1 single crochet into every stitch. And before we fasten off color B, go ahead and yarn over, pull through those last 2 loops of that final stitch from the previous round, and then we can cut B and continue on with our next round. Now for round 14, we'll do 1 final round of shaping. So remove your stitch marker, make your first single crochet, and replace it. This time the repeat is to work 5 single crochets and then your decrease. So that was our first one. And 5, okay, so then we'll do a single crochet 2 together for our decrease. And once again, the repeat for this round is to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, followed by a single crochet 2 together. And now the 15th and final round, we'll just make 1 single crochet into every stitch. And when you make it to the end of your round, we can remove our stitch marker and go ahead and make a slip stitch in that marked stitch. That way this will correct that jog a little bit and make this a little more even. Now when you cut your tail, leave it nice and long. We're going to use this to sew on the band in just a little bit. Now the last thing we need to crochet is the band, so we'll take color A, make a slip knot, and we'll start off by chaining 7. Then we'll find that second chain from the hook and work a slip stitch. And do that once for each chain. So our repeat for the band is nice and simple. We're going to continue working with slip stitches. At the end of every row, we'll chain 1, we'll turn our work, and then we need to find the back loop and we're going to slip stitch there. So you may have to turn it slightly over that way. You can see both loops of that V for that stitch. I'll make sure I work in that first one. And by the way, that chain one does not count as a stitch. So I'll slip stitch into that first one and in each remaining stitch. So here's what our band looks like after we've worked a few rows, and we just want to continue with that repeat until it measures about 6.5 inches, or basically so that it's long enough to be sewn around the opening here of our glove. When you're finished with that, your band should look something like this, and we can go ahead and fasten off. Before we can sew the band in place, let's go ahead and tend to these little holes that we have in the fingers. Now we really only need one of these tails to close them up, but you'll just thread one of those on your darning needle. And just work a few stitches around that opening there, and we'll close it up. We really don't have to do too much. And then we'll simply repeat that for the other fingers as well. Now the next thing we'll do is thread our darning needle with the longest tail that we have. It should be on your hand here, but you could also use one of the tails from your band, and if none of them are long enough, you can just add a new piece of yarn. So we need to sew this band in place. The first thing that we'll look at, or that we'll notice here, is that it's reversible. So it looks the same on both sides. Doesn't really matter which one or which side you have facing out. Just to run that through the corner stitch there. And then I like to work the whip stitch. So for every stitch I have, I'll sort of work that through the row. We'll get a couple stitches in place just to make sure that everything is attached and secure. And before we get too far, we'll just make sure that everything is going to fit properly, because we will need to stretch it just a little bit in order to get it in place, and we just need to take note of that as we're sewing it. So what I'll do is stretch it with my fingers just a little bit as I'm sewing and just work this around the band.